Welcome, viewers and listeners, to another edition of CHP Talks. We're here with a repeat guest, Mrs. Nadine Ness from Saskatchewan. Nadine, thanks for taking the time to join us today.
Thanks for having me.
So, for those who were not on didn't have the privilege of listening to our last interview with Nadine, Nadine is a married mother of four. She, with her husband and children, live in the wonderful province of Saskatchewan. She's a former RCMP officer. She's also the founder and president of Unified Grassroots, which is a nonprofit organization which began in a time of COVID mandates and is focused on the fight against division, hate, discrimination, and coercion. Now, Nadine is a committed Christian. She tries hard to balance her family responsibilities and her organizational commitments. And she has a huge following on her Twitter account, some 25,000 plus the last time I checked. But not all those who go on her Twitter account are friendly. She's recently had an adventure in the Twitterverse, and that's what we're going to talk about today. So, Nadine, again, thanks for squeezing the time to come back on the show.
Yes, thanks for having me.
Yeah. So when we met you last spring, you were expecting, and now you are caring for four children, and keeps you very busy among all the other things that you take on. So we really appreciate you taking the time. First of all, before we go to Twitter, what's happening with the Unified Grassroots? And maybe you can talk a little bit about that, and then we'll jump on the Twitter discussion.
Yeah, so Unified Grassroots grown a little bit since we last talked. We have probably approximately, I'd say, if we count all our platform, maybe between 35 and 40,000 followers. So that's whether it's Signal groups, Facebook, or Twitter, or any of the other ones. That's kind of the reach that we have. It's mostly Saskatchewan. However, we have started expanding into other provinces. There's also I don't want to call it a franchise because it's not really a franchise, but maybe more like a chapter in Manitoba. And then we might also be expanding into Alberta to try to maybe grow a presence there, because a lot of the things that we fight for or that we want change on, some of that is federal, and it's a lot harder to do federal when you're only represented by Saskatchewan. So that's one of the things. We were approached by other provinces. So we've expanded into Manitoba. So there is a group there, a nonprofit that got registered kind of under our umbrella, called Unified Grassroots Manitoba. So, and we will eventually be expanding into Alberta, potentially into BC as well. We're just very careful when we choose a group. We don't want anything that's going to damage the work that Unified Grassroots has done, or the brand that we've done. We like to conduct ourselves according to the law. We like to try to stand by our mission statement that we're against division, hate, discrimination, coercion, no matter what side that comes from. So we've expanded a bit, and we're also involved in our province in Saskatchewan with the National Citizens Inquiry that I'm sure you heard of.
Yes,
Preston Manning was at first involved.
Yeah, I interviewed him a few weeks ago about the National Citizens Inquiry. I had a chance to meet him in Ottawa at the last Canada Strong and Free conference. And I really appreciate. I'm excited about the National Citizens Inquiry, which of course, is intended to be run by the citizens, not by the government looking into its own wrongdoing. So
exactly.
So it's an excellent effort, and I hope it gets off the ground, with a strong presence. I know they were looking for commissioners, and I'm not sure where that process is right now, but they're going to be.
I think they were working on it last week on kind of finalizing who those are going to be. I believe it'll be released soon in the next press inquiry. We're just organizing in Saskatchewan, finding a location, all of that, and getting that kind of locked in. It's easier to have someone who's on the ground that knows the province than someone who's not. So we've teamed up with another group as well, Living Waters group, which is south of the province, with John Graff's group. So he's also assisting as well. It's not just us. So
Yeah.
yeah, we're really excited about that. That's coming up April 20th to the 22nd in Saskatoon, although we don't have the location locked in yet.
Yeah, well, very good. I'm glad to see the organization expanding across the prairies, excuse me, because the prairie provinces historically, at least, have sort of been a basket of freedom-loving people that independent farmers and those who even in the oil patch people who are not really don't cotton to the idea of being told what to do and how to do it, but more we're going to run our community here. And a couple of those provinces have said they're not going to enforce if the government passes some of this firearms legislation, that would go as far as taking hunting rifles away from Canadians. Those provinces have said they're not going to enforce that. That's pretty interesting, when it involves the RCMP as well. And you're a former RCMP member.
Yeah. So from my understanding is they said they wouldn't allow the RCMP to be used because the RCMP in Saskatchewan is funded by the province. There is a little bit of kickback from the federal government because they do police the First Nation reserves as well. So from my understanding, that's how it came down, that they said you won't be able to use our resources to do it, so you'll have to get your own kind of thing. Right. Which I don't know if there's a whole lot they can do more than that. I'm hoping there is. I know Danielle was pushing back a lot more than Premier Scott Moe. I'm hoping that they'll be able to defend our way of life. I know, like, I live on a farm. I don't know if you know, but we live on the river, so we have coyotes, we have cougars, we have bears on our land. So even just fencing, it can cause a risk to go fencing without having that protection there in case we see a bear, a coyote, or a cougar coming at us, and we can't just not go fence. Right, it's our way of life, right? So a lot of farmers have that same risk, and you're taking away the tools that we would need to be able to provide for ourselves. So, and that's not even hunting. That's just in order for us to be safe on our own land, to carry the duties that we have for our farming. And I think, unfortunately, we have a lot of people in government that know nothing about rural living, and that know nothing about our way of rural life. They've come from the city, lived in the city. It's funny, we kind of divide it between the West and the East, but I think that's not even the division, because even in the East, the rural living folks live the same way we do. I think it should be more city living versus rural living. And unfortunately, the population's all in the cities, right?
Yes, the voting population, and that's a tragedy, because really voting, you can see the difference in the voting patterns between city dwellers and urban or rural residents. So not quite sure why that is, but I think there is that spirit of independence, and we're willing to face some adversity in order to be able to have the lifestyle we want. And so then when a government comes along and tells us, no, we're going to tell you how to live, it doesn't sit well with many of us. And
I think there's another layer to that. I think we're used to community living in the sense we don't depend on the government as much, but we do depend on each other. So we have neighbors that come and help out. We have so that mentality, you don't necessarily need the government because you have your community, you have each other. And I don't think you have that in the city as much, because most of the people don't even know who their neighbors are in the city. They don't interact with them, versus I know probably in a 10-kilometer radius who all my neighbors are. So, and I've only been here for a year and a half. And I think everyone kind of says, oh, that's my neighbor, although they're like 10 kilometers away, So it's a complete different mentality. And I wish that it was instilled more in the city living as well, because we've kind of moved away from being a community, more individualized.
Yeah.
So that might have something to do with it. I don't know.
Well, I think you're right. And our mobile society, lots of times people don't put down very deep roots if they're being moved especially from one city to another, and their children are growing up in a different neighborhood than the parents grew up in. I think it it's in a fast-paced society, a highly technical society, and I think you're right. Sometimes people don't know their next door neighbors right in the city, right? So I wanted to talk about, I saw on Twitter the news that you had been banned from Twitter, or your account had been frozen and
permanently suspended, they called it. So it wasn't like a frozen until you delete a tweet. It wasn't anything like that. I just remember I got my coffee and my usual routine as I'm having coffee in the morning. I look at Twitter, and I went to look at Twitter, and it says your account is permanently suspended. And it wasn't like a specific tweet. I've never had a tweet flagged. I've never had a warning, nothing like that. I am very careful with what I write on Twitter. I don't attack back. I get attacked a lot. Sometimes I will interact with specific tweets just to get the algorithms going, but I usually choose positive tweets. So not necessarily, I don't usually interact with trolls unless it's something that it's a pure lie that I can just discredit right away. Then I might interact. But yeah, I was shocked because of all the accounts on Twitter. Why was mine suspended? It made no sense.
Especially under the new regime with Elon Musk having recently taken over as the owner of Twitter. And it seemed like accounts that had been previously suspended or closed had reopened. So I was quite shocked and surprised to see your account on hold. Now, that didn't last long. You were 24 hours or something like that.
Not even. So as soon as it happened, I tried messaging. So a lot of my contacts are actually on Twitter Messenger. So it's kind of funny that I never really planned for it to get suspended. So I was like, oh, I can't even reach my bigger contacts that might even have a contact in. So I had a few that I could reach. So Marty up north, I don't know if you know him. So I had him on Facebook. So I messaged him. I messaged a few other people that I had. And then some people who saw it, they kind of rallied together. They did a Twitter space. They were able to kind of link me in. So Wogpog, I don't know if you follow him or that group of Twitter spaces. So they did a Twitter space. They kind of started a campaign along with Marty. And then I had someone reach out that I actually know and says, hey, I know someone at Twitter. I'm going to see what's happening. And then I appealed it right away. And I explained that I found this very concerning, considering that my account is one of the bigger ones, whether like I'm not saying that out of pride. It is one of the bigger ones in Saskatchewan and very involved politically. So I felt like if I'm getting silence for no reason, is this for political reasons? And if so, that's quite concerning with the upcoming Alberta election and then the Saskatchewan election in a few years. And there is a perceived notion that I'm involved with the new political party in Saskatchewan, although that's not the case. I did go speak at some of the events where they were organizing. I was asked to go because I love their stance on the vaccine mandates, on making sure that doesn't happen again, and on COVID policy or pandemic policy. But I don't get to decide what they write or anything like that. I'm not on their board. I have no involvement other than I support the people involved. But even that fact and my involvement with the federal politics side, it really made me concerned. Are they trying to silence a conservative voice or a Christian value voice as well? So I appealed it. I put that in my messaging. And then they emailed me back at some point, and I didn't see the email right away. Around 6 o'clock, I saw it and I responded, but they had already reactivated it.
Okay.
So I think they read my description. They went and looked at my account. Okay, she obviously doesn't break Twitter rules. So we're going to restart it. So I think it was something like 8 hours, maybe not even.
Okay.
But what was interesting is what I learned after the fact from my friend who's in contact with Twitter. So I learned that it was a coordinated effort of constant reporting of my tweets, almost every tweet that I did. And it started 5 months ago. So it wasn't when I started being vocal against COVID. No, it was a specific time 5 months ago. And when we tried to find out who it was, they said, just basically said, go look 5 months ago and then go look who was commenting on your accounts. And I actually started blocking a lot of people around then because I don't mind engaging in normal discussion. But a lot of these trolls, a lot of these, I would say, left-leaning accounts, they're not respectful. They're not engaging. It's just an attack after attack. And they're even to the point where they're making up blatant lies,
Yeah.
things that they say I've done in my past, or things that have not even a little bit of snitch in reality. So,
Yeah.
so I thought about it this way. A lot of people say, well, if you block them, you're saying that you're afraid of them, or it's not that. If I'm having a party at my house and I have invited guests and one guest comes and disrupts the entire party to the point where people don't even want to come anymore, am I going to invite that person again into the conversation? No. If you're going to bring some value to the conversation, yes, I'll debate. But if you're just going to insult, attack, lie, I don't want you disrupting the conversation, the environment that we have on Twitter. And Twitter can be quite negative. So I think it's people say, oh, just mute, but they still bring in that negativity. And then people are less likely to want to comment because they're intimidated by these troll attacks, which, I mean, I don't know if you've had many interactions like that, Rod, on Twitter, but it can be quite draining for some people who aren't used to it. I'm used to it now,
Yeah.
and I know who I am in Christ, so it doesn't shake me. I'm on a solid foundation, but not everyone has that. So I don't want them to come in and interact with me, and then all of a sudden you have this group of people attacking them, which I've noticed if they can't get to me, they try to get to the people around me. They try to, just even recently, they went again after my husband making false reviews on Rate My MD and things like that. Thankfully, I contacted the company and now they've put some safeguards in place. They won't approve any reviews unless it meets their criteria. So thankfully they're doing that, or they're going after people who know me at an arm's length even.
Wow.
Or so yeah, I don't know what the proper solution is, but I thought, well, if I block them, then they can't even come in and disrupt. So I last week, I think it was last week, I blocked about 200 accounts. So I just went back to what Twitter had told me and I went through that and just block all the kind of really horrendous troll accounts. So, and I will do that. It's not that I'm afraid of what they have to say. I just want people who interact with me to not get attacked.
Yeah.
And it's more of protecting what we've built, protecting a positive environment on Twitter.
Yeah. Well, they're trying to silence your voice. And we have a little saying on a placard in our garage. It says, when censorship is the tool used when the lie loses its power. So it seems like those on the left can't really win some of these arguments. So rather than if they can't win the argument, they don't want you to be able to talk either. That's why they either try to block certain speakers from coming to universities, or or they set up so much noise people can't hear them. Well, free speech requires a couple of things. It requires the person be able to actually say the things they want to say, but also that those that they're speaking to can hear them. And it's so rude, I think, when they go and they start shouting or blowing horns or something so that the people can't hear what they're trying to say.
It's funny. they try to do something negative and evil, I would say, but in return, the scripture, you might know it off the, is it Galatians 50:30? Is that the one? I can find it, or Genesis 20. I'll find it when we're talking, but where he says God will take all evil and use it for good.
Yeah.
So they did that, and my account was at 22,600. So within a week, within a few days, it grew by 2,500 followers. So it just expanded the reach of influence to begin with. So they can attack. It's just going to keep growing as long as I don't turn into them and don't engage the way that they do. I'm going to continue reflecting Christ and not send hate back. And I think people will want that side of it instead of seeing all the negativity. I think they'll want to come in for the positivity.
Yeah, like some of these pastors that were arrested for keeping their churches open, like their churches have expanded. Like there's more people going there than ever after the government tried to basically silence them and put them out of commission. So
yeah. Oh, the scripture is Genesis 50:20. You planned evil against me. God planned it for good to bring about the present result, the survival of many. So that's when I believe that was Joseph when the family kind of kicked him out, tried to make him look like he was dead, but then he ended up saving so many
right.
With the famine and stuff. So I just kind of find it interesting. And I think we sometimes get down on ourselves when negative things happen, but I think we should turn it around and see how is God going to use this for good.
Yeah, that's awesome. So was it an organized group? Like it was kind of an organized attack. Is there a particular group that was going after you, or just individual?
Well, there has been constant harassment from a specific group, and that's been since the beginning. I only have had my account, I believe, since like November or October. I'd have to go back and look, not of the last year, but the year before. So just a bit over a year and a half and a bit. And there's been similar constant attack. There was defamation attack against my husband back last, not this past winter, the winter before, where they made false allegations against my husband. They even made allegations to the College of Physicians. Thankfully, there was no basis to that, so the college couldn't do anything. And we considered taking legal action at the time, but as a Christian, sometimes I hesitate with that taking action, because God almost warns against that. You got to give them a chance to repent. But I did, so I thought, okay, I'll just let it go. And so that was last year. So I know specific accounts, specific names who did that. So and they're like a group of like 10. So they don't just do this to me. I've found out since this has happened, I've had several of people that they've done the same thing too actually approach me and say, hey, these people did that to me too. So there's been like 10 of them that have come forward so far. So I think we recognize there's a problem. We're just trying to figure out how we're going to deal with that problem.
Yeah. So how big is the takeover by Elon Musk? Do you have a perspective on that, especially considering your recent escapade there with Twitter?
Yeah, I think it's been quite effective. I think he's kind of made it clear that he wanted to respect free speech. I don't know if this coordinated attack had happened last year, we would have had the same result of my account being turned on right away. It's clear. Anybody can go look at my Twitter history. I'm very respectful. I don't attack. I'm very positive on Twitter. I do bring light to specific situation. Being in the group that I am and the president, I hear a lot of personal stories that a lot of the mainstream media is not sharing. So I then become a voice of some of the people like with adverse reaction or who've been fired or who were negatively affected by the mandates. So I do share those stories, but other than that, there's no reason why my account should have been suspended. So I think the fact that there's new people there and they recognize the priorities that Elon Musk has said he's putting forward, I think we're seeing a change that way. And we're seeing a lot of old account that were suspended being reactivated. So we can have that discussion back and forth. Like, it's funny, they like to say the science is settled. The science never settled. You need to have open debate. If we considered that before, we would still be bloodletting, or we would still be giving formaldehyde. I always get that drug name wrong, but we would still be prescribing that. We would still think that cigarettes are healthy, right? At one point, you had some doctors saying, hey, I think this is doing more damage than good. We should look at this. And those same doctors were tried to be silenced, the same as the doctors today who are speaking against these mandates or
Well,
these mRNA injections, right?
exactly.
So,
My favorite is Dr. Ignaz Semmelweis, who in the mid 1800s was trying to get doctors to wash their hands before delivering babies. After they're coming from a dead body and then going straight to delivering babies, and women were dying of infections. And he said,
infection.
wash your hands, wash your hands. And they considered him a heretic. In fact, they basically drove him nearly to the madhouse because they thought that was silly. Well, now, of course, if you were so stupid today as a doctor not to wash your hands, and sterilize and everything else.
It's
So, and here was a guy who was on the outskirts of the medical community, and he was right and they were wrong. So, yeah, you're right. Science is always changing. The corporate culture of these social media giants and tech giants today, like Twitter now, is a kind of a gap in the clouds, but they basically, these social media giants have tended to be extremely left wing, and they've drastically influenced public opinion with their algorithms and so on, and even voting patterns. So just maybe as an expression to our listeners here, some advice. How can freedom lovers and Christians and those who care about the future of this country, how can we navigate? Twitter is a great example, but there's also Facebook and other. How can we best navigate in that environment and get our message out when there's so many people trying to shut us up?
Yeah, I think the key word, the key thing here is choosing your words carefully. Um, we want to go. I always say we want to drive at 100 kilometers an hour because that's the speed we're comfortable at. That's what will get us to where we want to go. But sometimes the rest of the traffic is driving at 20 kilometers an hour. And sometimes we might have to slow down our speed to be able to reach those people. And I think once we do that, then you start swaying public opinion a little bit more of a faster speed.
Being patient with the culture in a sense, not that we want to continue to get our message out, but we can't push the culture faster than they're willing to go. We
Yeah.
need to both demand in a polite way the right to be heard, but we also have to understand that the rest of the culture is not looking at the world through the same glasses, and so we have to be patient in trying to explain it. But when they shut us up, or
Yeah.
when they kick us off Twitter or those types of things, then we do need to stand up for the right to be heard in a free and democratic society.
Yeah, exactly. And it's hard too because like even Facebook, they're very much like we have a Facebook group and we're very much shadow banned there. So I shared my Twitter suspension on the Facebook group to see if some people could join in this campaign of getting the account back up because we do a lot of work with spaces on Twitter,
Right.
and we have one coming up tomorrow, which it's not tomorrow for when your show goes on,
Yeah.
but we do have one Sunday where we're going to be a bunch of former police officers discussing the ethical dilemma in policing. So that's happening on Sunday, but if my account was suspended, we wouldn't be able to do that. So while I recognize we have to work with what we've got, and we have to recognize what the rules are and try to work around that. I'm a firm believer is if they have rules or I like to find innovative solution to kind of work within those rules, but still get the message out. I remember way back when you weren't allowed to protest, they said 10 people maximum gathered together. I thought, well, okay, let's have 5 people at every corner of the city in Saskatoon.
Right.
Throughout the entire city, and we'll do our protest there, all wear the same color. So things like that, you got to find ways around that and not just give up, not just get discouraged, but find ways around coming together. If you have to change the language, I know some groups did that, and it's horrific that we're even at a point in our lives where we have to do that. Like, I don't think we have free speech on social media. I really don't. I think Twitter is one of the only ones. And I think Elon saw that and saw it as a business opportunity, because if he can open it video like YouTube, if he can kind of make Twitter a little bit like YouTube, a little bit like Facebook, a little bit like the other ones, it will be one of the only platforms that will have free speech. So you're going to see a lot more people come in because they can't be silenced there. So I think it's a great business move that he's done. Excellent. Really. So, yeah.
Very, very good. It was a breath of fresh air when we saw, there was that long drawn out process, negotiations, and finally when he took the helm, we thought, well, we hope that it is, as he said, it's going to be free speech, and so far it kind of looks like it is. So I'm glad that you were reinstated quickly, and I'm glad for all the work you're doing, the people that you're communicating with, the networks you're building, because it is a time for Canadians to stand up, not only for free speech, but for the democratic process and for independence within communities, communities that are willing to do what it takes to build strong social networks and not just kowtow to government edict. So, Nadine, thank you for this time, and I know your children are waiting for you to get back to them and your company. So thank you for squeezing us in. God bless you, and we'll be in touch again. Keep up your good work, and you are an encouragement to us. Oh, what's your Twitter handle there? How do people find your Twitter?
Oh, it's Nadine G as in golf Ness. So Nadine G Ness.
Yeah. Nadine.
And then on
G.
Yeah, NADINE GNESS. Yeah. And then on Facebook, our group is Unified Grassroots. Now we have 2 pages. One is like a public business page. We post things there so it can be shared. And we also have a private Facebook group that you can request to join. It's private, not because we meant to make it private. When we first started, we didn't realize it was going to explode the way it was. It was just to share details of my address location.
Okay.
And then it kind of grew out of control. So the Facebook's private. We can't make it public, even though we tried. Once it's private, it stays private. But people can request to join from there. We usually post on both the public and the private. So they search Unified Grassroots. They should be able to find both.
Wonderful. Well, thank you again very much. Thank your husband for looking after your children while you were occupied here, and wish you the best in the days ahead.
Okay, thank you. You have a good day.
Yeah, take care. Bye-bye.
See you.